Welcome to The Late Show. It is Thursday the 24th of July and I'm joined by my co-host, Mandy Johnson.
Thank you, Tim. Good evening.
Yeah,
Good
it's
evening.
great to see you.
Great
We
to be
work
here.
out
Thank
through
you.
the day what is the issue of today. And just if I address this to all of you folks, because we want your involvement, your thoughts on the state of Palestine. And we put it as a small s in the title, the state of Palestine, because in one sense, Palestine is in a state. In another sense, there are calls now by Sadiq Khan, about 60 plus Labour MPs, to recognise the state of Palestine. Arafat, announced the state of, the great, founder or pioneer of modern terrorism, Yasser Arafat, founded the state in Algiers. They had a vote with the Palestinian National Council, I think it was. So we'd be very interested in your thoughts, but we do want to limit this because believe it or not, and it can be hard to believe when you look at the media, even the concept of the state of Palestine is relatively recent. The state of Israel was reborn in 1948. In 1988, I think it was, Yasser Arafat decided to declare this state. But look at what's happened since. It's been an absolute disaster and it's been a tragedy for the Palestinian people. So the first question, Mandy, is can we contain ourselves to just a few decades? It's so tempting, isn't it, to go back 100 years, 200 years, 2,000 years.
We will try to do our best in an hour, literally condense it, summarize it, be as succinct and as concise as we can be.
Yeah. So this is the timeline. If you have a look at this list, this is where we're going to just try and contain ourselves to see what is the process of, and there's more things that have happened, of course, since 1967. Some of you may have even been born since 1967, but I'll just go through the list. So we'll talk about each of these key milestones, we can call them. The Six-Day War in 1967, the First Intifada, 1987, the Madrid Conference, 1991, after the First Gulf War, the Oslo Accords that followed, the Declaration, spelt slightly different with two A's rather than two E's, but the Declaration of Principles, that was on the White House lawn, Oslo II, the interim agreement, Wye River Memorandum, Y2, 1999, Camp David Summit 2000, disengagement from Gaza with Ariel Sharon, and then the Annapolis Conference. And I'm sure, and that was in 2007, I'm sure you'll all say, oh no, but you've missed out this thing that happened or that thing that happened. But many of us have lived through it. And those of us who have traveled to Israel, as many of you on Revelation TV have, and I've traveled 55 plus times to Israel, was involved reporting in the early 2000s there. So that is our framework, but we can't resist just having a look at what happened after the Balfour. And sorry, we've got a couple of flies in the studio who want to join in the debate, but I tell you, I'm going to squash them if Mandy doesn't. I want you to look at this graph, and it's from Martin Gilbert, the Zionist Plan for Palestine in 1919. You see, I can't even contain myself now, but this is an interesting one as we look at other maps, because after the Balfour Declaration, it was quite vague what was going to be the boundary of the Jewish homeland. And this was presented to the Paris Conference, which followed the First World War. And on November, I'll read what they have just here. On November the 2nd, 1917, the British government promised to allow the Jews to set up a Jewish national home in Palestine. This promise, embodied in the Balfour Declaration, stimulated the Zionists to put forward practical proposals. In February 1919, the Zionist organization submitted its first territorial plan to the Paris Peace Conference, which was rejected. But if you have a look at this map, just to get your bearings, it is really ancient Israel. I mean, it's not the greater ancient Israel, but it's got, both sides of the River Jordan.
Yes, more or less it follows the 12 tribes, the allocation of land for the 11 tribes, because obviously the Levites didn't have any land, but more or less on a slightly smaller scale and considerably less than what God had promised in the book of Deuteronomy.
Thank you. But if you go back to the map, I just want to point out two things. The absence of Jordan, the absence of the so-called West Bank of Jordan, which was a state that was set up subsequent to this map, but also there's no Gaza Strip. So it's an interesting fact that we're talking about relatively recent and very recent history. So you can join in this discussion. Remember, we're going to be focusing on what happened subsequently. Now, I want to look at there's a set of 7 maps, which gives you a picture again, a feel from 1888 right up to the early 2000s. And not easy to see the writing, but certainly you can see the map. Do you want to just go through each of those? First,
Yes.
1888.
So that's under Ottoman rule, and in those days it was a province called Palestine. It was and then when
province of Turkey.
the province of
So that's the red, isn't it?
yeah, that's the red. So you have the Turkish.
The blue is
like
the British.
Then the next to it, the blue. Then that's the mandate, British.
No, actually, in 1888 it was the British Empire.
No, I meant the blue one next to it, 1918.
So if you go the next one along,
Yes.
then you've got the British Empire.
Then you have the
as
British
expanded.
Empire. So that's British mandate.
Yeah.
And then the next one, 1947, does it say?
1948.
Yes.
Shall I do it? Because
Yes.
I've got it in front
Yes,
of me
okay,
as well.
go on then.
So basically, first one shows the Turkish Empire against the British Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, when the Turks allied with the Germans, the Prussians, they were defeated, so the British Empire expanded. And then they were mandated to control that territory.
They were.
But it was effectively
That was
part of the British
after
Empire.
the Sykes-Picot Agreement.
So that was 1918 through to 1946. In 1947, that's the third map, you have the partition plan, so-called, and that shows these areas that the United Nations divided up. And you can see the white lines zigzagging through Israel. Well, basically what that meant was they wanted to create this Arab Palestine and a Jewish Palestine. But then the war ensued, and the result was the middle map. And the middle map shows what the outlines of Israel were in relation to Egypt and Jordan. That's quite clear, isn't it?
Yeah.
But again, note, there's no West Bank, because in 1967, Jordan joined in the war against Israel, the Six-Day War, and were defeated. And that's why the West Bank then didn't quite go white, but it came under Israeli rule, which it is to this day. But then gradually, subsequent to 1967, there was the rise of, as it were, the Palestinian cause, the right of Palestinian self-determination, and that's manifested itself in our list.
Indeed.
So I think that's quite a good intro. What do you think?
Yeah, definitely.
I love maps. I love maps. I love charts. I like to see what are the facts.
So do I. I love maps because you can see at a glance the picture that tells 1,000 words.
Yeah, exactly. So come back to our list again, just to get our bearings. And that's the overall list since 1967. And Mandy, you're going to start.
I am. The Six-Day War. I was a little girl during the Six-Day War, so I do remember it. I have a good memory. I've been blessed with a good memory. I tell you what I do remember. I remember my dad and everybody in Lebanon having to paint their windows. With us, it was like a very dark blue, and so that if we put the lights on, the Israeli enemy would not see any houses or whatever. But of course, we weren't attacked in Lebanon. But the 1967 war started because the
Let's put the map up of the Six-Day War, and Mandy can talk us through it. It's showing some of the different forces that were at work
literally,
in 1967.
I love this map because I'm also interested in military history.
So we've got Lebanon at the top with
Lebanon in the
Tyre and
north.
Sidon.
So Israel is in blue, as you can see. You have Lebanon to the north of Israel that attacked, and then northeast you have Syria, and then northeast, and then on the east you have Jordan that's attacking it, and in the south, down in the southwest you have Egypt. So it was attacked on all fronts. It's absolutely amazing. But Israel already had intelligence. It knew that they were going to be attacked. So what they did is they did a preemptive strike, and they destroyed the Egyptian Air Force, they destroyed the Syrian Air Force, and in fact Jordan wasn't so keen but to enter the war against Israel. There was even a conversation between the King of Jordan and the Prime Minister of Israel, but he was bullied. He was bullied by Syria. He was bullied by Syria
and Nasser.
And President Nasser.
Because Nasser sort of had his fingers in the pie in Syria as well. He tried to create this pan-Arab.
And they lied to their own people. In fact, even though they had lost that 1967 war, they told their people they were victorious. They lied. So then what happened is then they were focused on Jerusalem in the 1967 war, and Israel was able to win back Jerusalem.
So it's quite a dramatic. It was
Bible prophecy coming true.
And then if we go back to that 67 war, map, of the 67 war, the whole territory of Sinai. So it's a much bigger triangle going right down to the tip of the Red Sea. I've just forgotten what that's. So Sharm el-Sheikh, which is on the peninsula right at the bottom, it was taken over by Israel right to the border of Egypt.
They could have hung on to that territory, but they gave it back to, I say gave it back to, it was originally theirs, but they gave it to
in the
Egypt.
Camp David Agreement.
In the Camp David Agreement, as with the peace treaty, land for peace.
So basically, comprehensive routes of the Arab nationalistic armies, and then this new concept emerged, and that's what this is all background to saying, what is the state of Palestine, and where did it come from, and is it legitimate, and is it viable, or is it just a ploy to destroy Israel?
It's the latter. It's a ploy to destroy Israel, because in fact there was no such thing as a Palestinian person or a Palestinian state. There was a province, and in fact Yasser Arafat was born and raised in Egypt, and he is the one who decided to use the term Palestinian. They had no recognition at all as a people, because some came from Egypt, some came from other parts of the Arab world, but they were, if you like, nurtured by the Muslim Brotherhood, which was set up in 1928 in Egypt. So Yasser Arafat came through that, and they were radicalized from a very, very young age. So he actually went to university. So he was radicalized at university, and he was able to continue and expand this radicalization process. So
we haven't got it in the timeline, but Arafat saw Jordan, as many did, as a Palestinian state, as the Palestinian state, and he instigated a coup attempt against King Hussein of Jordan, and that was in, I think, 74. It may have been earlier, but that was Black September.
The Black September, and what happened was King Hussein of Jordan had been trained at Sandhurst. Trained by the British. So he was not only very clever strategically, militarily, but he was also very tough. And they had tried to not only assassinate him, but they had tried to overthrow the government the government, not just the royalty, because they do have a government in Jordan, and they were continuously causing terrorist activities within Jordan.
So they were thrown out of Jordan, and where did they go, Mandy?
My home country, Lebanon.
Yeah.
And then they did the same thing in Lebanon. So from when they were thrown out from Jordan and they came to Lebanon, and the Lebanese said, "Oh, our brothers, the Palestinians," because by then they're known as Palestinians, come, we'll look after you. And they gave them fertile land, because Lebanon is part of the land of milk and honey, very fertile. So what did they do with this fertile land? Instead of growing crops or building schools and business with the money they had from the United Nations.
Fermented civil war.
They did foment civil war. What they did is they built tunnels underground. And in one of my books, I have black and white photographs of the tunnels that were underground, 7 layers underground. And they built a cache of arms and ammunition. And they started preparing in 1967. And the civil war in Lebanon did not start till 1975, the 13th of April, 1975. So they planned it. Their whole raison d'être, which is French for reason for being, was to annihilate the Israeli state completely.
And use that as a launch pad. Okay, so we're still doing backfilling, and we are coming up to the turning point. It probably was when Sharon went in the 1982. So the Israelis decided, because of the terrorism coming over the border and the rockets coming over the border, that they would go in and try and take out Arafat.
They did. They came as far as Beirut.
Yeah.
The Israeli army was so strong, they came as far as Beirut.
And he was ejected from the country.
They could have gone further.
Yeah.
But for the sake of the Lebanese, they didn't. And Arafat and his PLO, his fellow PLO fighters were put on a ship and sent to Tunisia and other North African countries. But there were smiles on their faces. But they went to Tunisia. Allegedly, they were expelled from Lebanon, but they came in through the back door.
Yeah. Well, they were allowed in,
Yes.
and then I'm going to just leave you hanging there in the mid-1980s, because then it all kicked off within Israel. But let's just read some of your emails coming in. Thank you very much, because there's a lot more of the story to come. But this is from Debs. Are you saying the occupied West Bank legally is Israel? Is that a fact then? Not what the world says, and you normally say we have to follow the legal laws of countries and pray for leaders. I know it wasn't Palestine, it was Jordan, but maybe it still is Jordan then. Confusing me. Please clarify the facts, not the opinion. Well, it is disputed territory. It's not occupied, it's disputed territory, but the world says it's occupied. And they want to keep saying it's illegally occupied. But it was a defensive war, and my understanding of the legal position in a defensive war, that territory you can take defensively, and that's the situation that's ongoing.
It's called utis possidetis juris. So under that legal principle, when you have won this land for yourself, then it is yours. So the land that is known as the West Bank actually belongs to Israel legally. And we will be showing how the 1920s.
So I don't think, Debs, when you wrote that, you thought you would get the actual legal terminology, but you've got it there. And I think that's a great answer, Mandy. Susie says, for a state to be recognised legally, it has to have defined borders and a viable government. Neither exists as far as Palestine is concerned. Thank you, from Susie. And another, Suzanne, says you can't deal with the devil. Funnily enough, that was always Israel's position. With terrorists, they would never negotiate with terrorists. And even, the Entebbe raid, we do. By the way, Netanyahu's
his brother Yoni,
in that
Jonathan.
raid. We do not. That was the mantra. We do not negotiate with terrorists, and maybe they'll be in a better position if they kept to that.
I agree with Susie. Is it Susie?
Yeah.
I agree with Susie.
Suzanne.
Suzanne, I agree with you, Suzanne, completely. You cannot negotiate with the devil.
Yeah.
You cannot negotiate with terrorists at all.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep on the story. We're giving you background. If you want to pitch in with some scripture verses, we don't mind that on Revelation TV. That's me giving a sort of British understatement. We welcome. It's like in the early days of credit cards, you would see on the counter of every shop, we accept Access and Visa. And then a guy, he was a kind of friend of mine, went to W.H. Smith and he said, why don't you change it to we accept, which sounds like we tolerate, to we welcome Access and Visa. And it sort of transformed the use of credit cards in the shops. So we welcome emails. We don't tolerate them. We love you to email in. And we're going to go back to our timeline now because Arafat was kicked out of Lebanon.
Yeah.
What did he then do? He fomented the First Intifada in 1987. Now I can give my own personal anecdotes. If we put the picture up, I think there's a picture of it. So Mandy was there in 1967 in Lebanon. I was in Israel in December, early December, and I think it was December the 9th when it kicked off. I was just outside the old city of Jerusalem. I had tear gas in my throat and in my eyes, so I experienced the whole works. Wow. Yeah. And then I knew I had friends who shopped with the Arab traders. I knew how distraught they were because they were threatened to close their shops, and if they didn't, they would be firebombed. But the world's media said it was a spontaneous uprising and boycott. Nothing could have been further. They were, and this is the whole raison d'etre, is to intimidate and suppress their own people to take part in these demos.
Which are, as you said, they're not spontaneous, they're always planned, orchestrated, yes.
So it's absolutely shocking. And so that Intifada happened in 1987, and it pretty well continued right through till, let's say, when Saddam invaded Kuwait. Who supported Saddam and celebrated on the streets? The Palestinians.
Exactly.
And that's why the Kuwaitis really don't have a lot of time for the Palestinians. And by the way, many other Arab countries aren't that interested in welcoming them onto their land.
They will not give them nationality. They will, when they're resident in those countries, they'll not give them the nationality of the country where they're living at all.
And look what they did in Jordan.
Exactly. Lebanon wasn't strong enough to kick them out when they started the war, and that civil war lasted 15 years. But Intifada is the Arabic word for uprising.
That's right.
Yeah. So when they are fed hatred and lies from a very young age, it's no surprise that by the time they're teenagers, that they would behave the way they do, right? Because they're told that...
There was a level of, there was animosity, of course there was, but nothing like that we've got now. So there was, as friends in Hebron told me, they said we had peace before the United Nations brought peace to Israel. And that's the problem, that's the tragedy. So that first Intifada started a ball rolling, which is, it's okay to just train children to throw stones and behind them to have guns and shoot. Howard, by the way, has got the footage.
He has.
So, and again, it presents David and Goliath. Israel is this oppressive Roman force. The Palestinians are those who are the oppressed. And that's basically the narrative which has been regurgitated. Palestinian Authority, Tanzim, all of these other Islamic Jihad, and then Hamas. It's the same storyline.
Well, a little side note that I know that there is a Lebanese family that has what they call an Arabic language Bible. And in the David and Goliath story, they have them the other way round. David is the Palestinian, and Goliath is the big bad Jew.
Exactly. And by the way, that is the whole narrative is inverted all the way through. When I, was writing this newspaper, which by the way was trying to bring about, help to inform Christians, help to draw people together. Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the current events. Let's look at the theology. It was all of that was in this newspaper. So the purpose was to actually try and find a resolution. But the more you dig into it, you realize that if children are being corrupted, which they were and are, you're never going to have a solution. So it's hard to have been involved since the 1990s and to see that we're not only back to square one, we're back to square minus 100.
Yeah, 2 steps forward.
It's so
and
tragic.
1 step back.
It's so tragic. Okay.
Or even 1 step forward.
So therefore, we had the Gulf War.
Yeah.
The 1991, if you remember, Mrs. Thatcher said to George Bush Sr., "Don't go wobbly on me, George. You cannot allow Saddam to get away with what he's done." George Bush went in with a whole coalition. He even set the date, a deadline. James Baker was very much part of that. And suddenly, post the collapse of communism, people saw that the US were a force to be reckoned with. And they went in and pulverized Saddam's forces in the desert, in the Iraqi deserts, and then stopped. But it did show a great power and resolve. And on the back of that, James Baker, the US Secretary of State, was able to force Israel, really.
Yeah.
They had something called loan guarantees, and there was $10 billion worth of loan guarantees, which isn't much today. But they said to Israel, if you don't come to a conference in Madrid, we will withdraw those loan guarantees, which were part of the Camp David agreement with Jimmy Carter. So both Egypt and Israel got these loan guarantees. James Baker threatened Yitzhak Shamir, who was the prime minister at the time, that if you don't come to the negotiating table at Madrid, the Madrid Peace Conference, then, so it's all, hardball tactics, business tactics.
Skullduggery, really.
Yeah.
And in fact, I remember President Carter, who had been a peanut farmer before he became a politician, and he was very well-meaning. He genuinely did care for
through his
Israel.
whole life.
He was a Christian. He cared for the Palestinians. He cared for the Israelis, and he genuinely wanted peace. But even as a youngster, I remember thinking when I heard him speak, he doesn't understand the mindset of the Arabs, particularly the Palestinians. He just did not understand where they were coming from. He wasn't.
But he did achieve getting Anwar Sadat and Menachem Begin together and do the peace deal.
That was amazing.
But you're going back in time. And we're going forwards to 1991. If we put up on the screen the 1991 Madrid Peace Conference, you'll see some of the personalities there, and you might recognize them. Down on the left is none other than Mikhail Gorbachev.
Yes.
So basically, James Baker was very good at bringing Russia, as it were, into the game. It was still the Soviet Union in those days, but it was fast diminishing.
Yeah, George Bush Sr. on the right-hand side.
You can see George Bush.
Yes.
And then it's very difficult as you go further back. I can see James Baker behind Bush and Yitzhak Shamir behind him. Arafat wasn't in the game yet in those days, but this was laying the groundwork for his rehabilitation.
Indeed. To go from...
neither Arafat nor Shamir would ever be in the same room together.
Not then.
The key thing was to get the Arab nations, and all these Arab nations were basically pressured into being together.
Yes, it was a precursor to bringing them together so that they would be able to negotiate.
Then something amazing happened a couple of years subsequent to that, and it was what they called the Oslo peace process. And it started with, there was a lady called Mona Jewel and Terry Rhodes Larson, his name was, and they managed to get Palestinian and Israelis, not leaders, but negotiators, to meet in Oslo secretly. And that started the ball rolling for the first time. Not only, let's say, Madrid, you had the Arabs and Israelis in the same room, because as you would remember this, the ambassadors of the Arab nations in the United Nations would always walk out when the Israeli was speaking. But so the Madrid was to get the Arabs and the Israelis together. The Oslo was to get the Israelis and the Palestinians together.
Which
So now we can see some momentum towards
Indeed.
the state of Palestine.
Yeah. And so then Clinton succeeded in doing that, President Bill Clinton. And of course, we have a famous photo of Yasser Arafat shaking hands there.
Let's have a look at it. Let's have a look at it.
And this is the actual text of the Oslo.
Okay, let's do the text first. Read that out.
It says, the government of the State of Israel and the PLO, which is Palestinian Liberation Organization team, representing the Palestinian people, agree that it is time to put an end to decades of confrontation and conflict, recognize their mutual legitimate and political rights, and strive to live in peaceful coexistence and mutual dignity and security, and achieve a just, lasting, and comprehensive peace settlement and historic reconciliation through the agreed political process.
So
and the word is agreed.
Yes.
So both sides agreed.
Absolutely.
And you can see them shaking hands, and the beaming President Clinton.
Let's have a look at this. So it's a major achievement, firstly for Arafat, because we'll keep this on for a while. We can talk about this for a while, because the PLO was an out-and-out terrorist organization.
Yes.
Israel never would negotiate. So it was something for Begin to meet with Sadat, but for Rabin to shake hands reluctantly, it has to be said, with Arafat was a massive achievement for Clinton. You have to say it.
It was a massive achievement, and
it had repercussions.
But it had terrible repercussions, of course. Now, Yasser Arafat, 1 minute he's shaking the hand, saying he's agreeing to a peace agreement, but then the next minute in the Arabic language he's renouncing it. He's renouncing it. Yeah. But he was a very clever tactician. He deliberately reinvented himself from terrorist to politician, so that he could meet with other politicians. Because he thought, perhaps the Palestinians can try and achieve their aims through political means. Not that they were going to lay down their arms, no, not at all. But he thought this is another way of, if you like, winning the propaganda war, if I can say that, because to this day, this is what the Palestinians have done. So they are winning the propaganda war.
And to achieve your ends through violence.
Through violence,
So this actually was seen as a great step forward, and it has to be said it was hopeful for peace and the cessation of violence, but actually looking back, it was a disaster, because it was welcoming, as it were, the devil into your camp.
It was.
And the end result of this, if we can go through the process without completely mind-boggling everyone, there was the second, Oslo II, as they call it, which was a further interim agreement. And you put this one together, Mandy. So, just tell us what's there, all those signatures.
Okay, so on the map there, you've got, what they did is, Judea and Samaria, commonly known as the West Bank. So they divided it into 3 areas, A, B, and C. So in Area A, the Palestinians were the ones who were governing. In Area B, you had cities. Area B, you had Palestinian villages. In Area C, you had Israeli settlements, and military camps, Israeli military camps, that is.
Yeah.
So when we hear people talking about illegal Israeli settlements, there's nothing illegal. That was agreed at the Oslo agreements in 1993, and then subsequently in Oslo.
And it wasn't entirely pinned down, but just looking at that more detailed map, you do see that it's a very complicated picture that was left by the British, by the Jordanians. It's very messy to give the heartland of Israel to the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan. Very messy, and this is the result of it. It's quite interesting looking at the signatures, if we could have a look back on that plan, because we've got Rabin and Peres on the top left, because Shimon Peres was a key mover towards this agreement. You can see Arafat for the PLO, and then
the Egyptian.
Warren Christopher. William Jefferson Clinton was the one who witnessed. So here's the signature next down. And then you have Warren Christopher for the United States. You have the Russian Federation. I don't know who that was. Gromyko probably. And then you've got Egypt. Andrei Gromyko. Correct. You've got the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, you've got the Kingdom of Norway, and the European Union got in on the act, which makes me very suspicious of the whole thing as soon as you see them in on it.
So was it worth the paper it was written on? That's what you think. When people sign their name...
It was bluff. It was bluff. And it's really, and that, in one sense, that's part of, if you're trying to get to, as it were, a final agreement, a final status agreement, this is the interim, it's presenting a hopeful, but once you got into the details, they talked about contiguity and to try and bring this patchwork of territories together and connect them. You can do it, but only in a peaceful environment. And the problem is you had all these jihadists who started, wreaking terror around the whole of Israel.
Yes, and I don't know if any of the viewers have seen that after the 7th of October massacre in 2023 that Hamas perpetrated on Israel, President Clinton, because in America they're still known as president even when they are no longer president, so Bill Clinton was interviewed and he openly admitted to regretting and
this is reflecting on
reflecting back on the Oslo Accords. He said he was duped by Arafat. He didn't realize that. He says, now I realize I was duped. But he was well-intentioned.
Very good. Let's read some more emails. Thank you very much, everyone. And, we're going to put you through the ringer because we've got even more, agreements and signings coming up. But this is from Paul and Ruth. Dear brother and sister, Tim and Mandy, please can we just show love? God is sovereign over all things. Pray for mercy on our knees. Jesus loves us and desires us to accept that we all fall short of what is required to get right with God. The Holy Spirit is our personal counselor. Only complete surrender to Jesus will provide the peace that surpasses all understanding. Let Israel rely on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We pray they will lean on him only. Thank you very much. I'll read a few more. Palestine will always be open to terrorist rule. Israel must take it over and police it. Even the ordinary Islamic civilian wants them to do that now. That's from Mr. M. And then Deborah just says, this is Deb's from earlier, thank you for your previous answer. Absolutely brilliant. So that was the legal position. I'm going to read on. I am playing devil's advocate, as they say, for tonight only, but only to seek truth for understanding, not to be troublesome. So this may be hard questions. I don't know. Who took Samson into Gaza from Israel? We're not, actually one of my principles tonight, Debs, if possible, is to try not to go into ancient history because we got our hands full just with the last few decades. I may come back to that, okay? I may come back to that. Otherwise, and there's more in the email, but just bear with me on that. This is from Glenda. Hi, isn't the so-called West Bank really Judea and Samaria, the land where Jesus walked?
It is.
That's the
it is. Although West Bank as in West Bank of the River Jordan. And I have good news, Paul and Ruth, as you say. Of course, we're called to love our enemies, and we do, and we pray for our enemies. And the good news is that 4 times since October 7th massacre, many Israeli Jews have been questioning themselves and whether they have a faith or don't have a faith. The number of Israeli Jews who have accepted Yeshua as their Mashiach has quadrupled. And in Gaza, there have been Gazans to whom Jesus Christ has manifested himself, either in dreams or in visions. And we know this from a Palestinian from Gaza who emigrated to the United States, who had a heart for Gaza and who keeps in touch with Gazans, and they have told him these stories. So good things are happening. Good things are happening. And out of disaster, adversity actually sometimes obliges us to question,
It's a very good point.
Question.
Very good point. Okay, this is from an anonymous texter. There's nothing to debate. The Holy Land was given to the Jews by Yahweh, and Yahweh is the highest authority. Who has the right to claim the Jewish claim? Who has the right to claim the Jewish claim over the Holy Land? Yahweh will defend and protect his people, the Jews. Frankie says, let's not forget the Damor massacre.
Oh, Damor. Yes,
Tell us
Damor.
that, and then we'll go back to our timeline.
I added that in Gordon's book, the Damor massacre. The Damor massacre, there was a village, a town in Lebanon called Damor, a Christian town, where the Palestinians came in and they committed such atrocities. It was a dress rehearsal for what happened in Israel on October the 7th. That's what they did with Damor. They did unspeakable things. The reason Lebanon became a nation state is because it had suffered so many massacres, the worst of which was 1860, and then the whole world came to their rescue. But yeah, Damor, and thank you very much for remembering Damor. Yes, and people don't talk about that.
Excellent.
What is the name of that viewer?
That was Frankie.
Frankie, thank you, Frankie.
Great.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I don't like it's only because we've put so much into our program. I don't like to interrupt you because you've got so much to give us, Mandy. You've got so much knowledge. The next so-called sort of step or milestone was the Wye River Memorandum. Let's have a quick look at that.
So the memorandum aimed to resume the implementation of the 1995 interim agreement on the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. That's the Oslo II Accord. The Palestinian side agreed to take all measures necessary in order to prevent acts of terrorism, crime and hostilities directed against the Israeli side. Now
here we have different players. So Netanyahu has appeared on the scene. He won an election, a very close election in '96, I think, against Shimon Peres. Also in there is the King Hussein of Jordan and Arafat. And part of this deal, if I remember, it was the withdrawal of Israeli troops from the West Bank and giving up Hebron. And on the other side, and this is a fact from those who were part of the discussions, Netanyahu was given an assurance from Clinton that Jonathan Pollock would be released, and he was an Israeli spy in the US Navy, and he'd been in prison for donkey's years. I think he's still in prison. And Clinton gave him the assurance that that would be achieved. And as Netanyahu went up to the podium, you actually saw Clinton whisper in his ear, "I can't deliver on Pollock." So he had completely set him up. And Netanyahu was quite young on the world stage at that point, and he had to go through with it. And his first prime ministership was fatally damaged because he didn't deliver on Jonathan Pollock. And then so there's more going on, isn't there?
He lost the election after that.
Yeah.
Very bright man, extremely bright man, who could have gone into business, but I think God had other plans for him.
Yeah. And so we have another slide on the Wye River Memorandum.
Not Ross on Wye, by the way.
No, it's not. That's the
Wye.
thing. It was some
in the United
naval
States.
academy or something over there. But very quickly, I'll read it, shall I? The United States intervened to end a stalemate. President Clinton's active participation produced the Wye River Memorandum. The new agreement restored old Israeli promises, such as the opening of a Palestinian airport and the safe passage route between Gaza and the West Bank. For old Palestinian promises, such as publicly renouncing the PLO Charter's anti-Israel provisions, collecting unauthorized arms and implementing anti-terrorist actions. Wye promised to put 40% of the West Bank under partial or total Palestinian control. So you can see it's growing, this momentum towards a Palestinian state. And by the way, I do remember, because I used to watch a lot of news in those days and I was just starting my newspaper, I remember the vote to the Palestinian National Council with Clinton president. I think it was in Egypt, Sharm el-Sheikh, and I didn't see a vote at all. I watched it every moment on CNN, and they were laughing and joking and hands up and standing up, and it was a chaotic, it was not a vote. And so I personally don't think they ever renounced the PLO Charter.
So it wasn't Sharm el-Sheikh, it was Sham el-Sheikh.
Sham, yeah,
Sham el-Sheikh.
Exactly, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we can see in 1999, the signing, you know, you've got Madeleine Albright there,
Yeah.
who was the Secretary of State at the time. We're getting near, by the way, to the end of Bill Clinton's presidency. So he was desperate for something to happen.
He wanted a Nobel Peace Prize.
It was probably the last chance saloon. Of course, then Camp David followed. But the point about it is Madeleine Albright's, it was all about economics and land and territory. And Madeleine Albright wrote a book following this saying, and the title of the book, if you just put her back up on the screen, was The Mighty and the Almighty. And she said that the reason it failed was no recognition at all of the religious dynamic. And then we heard a lot more of that.
Yes, excellent observation.
Yeah. Then immediately following, you have the Camp David summit. Change, you know, Prime Minister Ehud Barak appears on the scene. He was absolutely desperate to do a deal.
Oh my goodness.
Go on, what happened in Lebanon?
Well, not Lebanon, no, but Ehud Barak.
He pulled out all the troops and he left the Maronites high and dry.
He did. Oh my goodness me. Bashir Gemayel was the man who had been elected by the Lebanese to be president. He was collaborating with Israel, and of course many in Lebanon didn't want that. They didn't want an entente cordiale between Lebanon and Israel. So he was assassinated. It was tragic. I went to his memorial here in London at the Brompton Oratory. The church was packed. The Brompton Oratory was absolutely packed. But yes, Ehud Barak, what he did, he handed everything to the Palestinians on a silver platter. He even offered them East Jerusalem as their capital. East Jerusalem as their capital. He offered them land swaps and people swaps, and he offered them so much. He offered them a two-state solution, basically.
And this is the classic. And to his credit, he flushed them out because they rejected it. Because Arafat wanted a right of return to all of Israel. So he was never interested in just the West Bank or Gaza or a little bit of autonomy. He wanted to take Israel. And the way to take Israel was to have a full right of return, so-called right of return, for all descendants of Palestinians who were living in Israel just prior to the War of Independence.
Amongst those who protest on Saturdays across the UK and other European and United States cities, sometimes you see a little protest sign that says right of return. So some of them do still claim a right of return. There is no right of return. For those who left in 1948, they were told they could come back in a week by Hajj Amin al-Husseini. And of course, that was never going to happen.
Yeah. A few more of your emails, and then we're sort of coming up to the crescendo. Arafat escaped Lebanon by dressing up in a female burqa, Stephen says. Didn't know that. I thought he was allowed off openly. He was allowed to step onto a boat. And
I believed he's. Yes, I'll have to check that.
But that's very interesting.
But I don't remember that. I don't believe he. Maybe on another time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is from Ivan. I have two observations for you to provide clarification or perhaps correction. Sorry if I'm reading fast because we're running out of time. Judea and Samaria, Shomron, are commonly referred to as the West Bank because the area was captured from Israel by Jordan. It was subsequently recaptured by Israel, its original owner. The term the West Bank is used by those who wish to dilute the fact that it was originally part of Israel and is now again part of Israel. Second point, for those who continue to promote the idea of a two-state solution, we haven't even got onto that, by the way. That might be a future program. We're just trying to talk about Palestine and where did that come from. For those who continue to promote the idea of two-state solution, there are already two states. The second state is Jordan, which was divided and removed from the original allocation of total Israel land area assigned after the defeat of the Ottoman Empire. I'd be grateful for your response. Brilliant program, and I welcome the expertise you both provide. Absolutely right, Ivan. It was not... It was Churchill who said, I created a kingdom on a Sunday afternoon by the stroke of a pen. And it was, previous to that, it was part of the Ottoman.
I agree with all Ivan says, the short answer.
So the next is from Duncan. It would appear that since 1948, Israel has fought nearly 20 wars and won them all against huge odds, apart from a couple that were negotiated. Mandy could probably confirm this. It shows that God is totally in control and that Israel is the apple of his eye. Great program.
He who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, the Bible tells us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that has great impact on us because he will keep our going out and our coming in. This is from Anne. I'm struggling to know the truth as there are so many stories going around. Who is responsible for the food getting or not getting into Gaza? So sad when so much is supposed to be there. Thank you for your coverage. And it's a war situation, and the first casualty in war is the truth. That I've seen the pictures of the stockpiles of supplies that Israel has allowed. It's just there in northern Gaza, and it's not being collected because there's a power game, and these NGOs are going to lose all of their power if Israel and the Gaza Humanitarian Organization succeed.
They're refusing to distribute the food that has gone in.
Yeah.
They're United Nations associates.
Mandy, how are we doing with these slides? We're getting through them.
Are we nearly there? Okay.
2000 was Camp David. What else happened in the year 2000?
The Intifada, the second Intifada.
Yes.
And
that was an Arafat Intifada, absolutely pure and simple. He started it. By the way, I met him just at the end of 2000 in Bethlehem. Funnily enough, I think it kicked off. So 1999, 2000, there was still hopes right up to the last minute, and there was a Christmas service at the Church of the Nativity, and I was a guest of one of the patriarchs, and Arafat came in, and there was an aura about him. Then there was a kind of fearful pause. Then there was clapping and smiling. But I looked, when you're very close to people, you look in their eyes, and there was complete fear. So how can you smile and be fearful? It's quite a tangible thing I got there. And then I was introduced to him, and I refused because he kissed the patriarch's beard, and he came to me to do the kissing job, and I put out my hand, which was the only thing I could do to keep the distance. And I was told later, you will never be invited again. It was an insult what you did.
They expected you to kiss him.
And someone else said I was fortunate to get out alive.
Wow.
Because he had when you've got a Hitler-type character who has the power of life and death.
Exactly.
This life, anyway.
Yes.
You see who's calling the shots.
Yes.
No doubt about it. There was a real sense of
But he
power.
who is in you is greater than he who is in the world.
Yeah, I didn't fear. Obviously, it's only reflecting back. But I do remember his eyes were dazzling and his teeth were dazzling. They were the two things I remember. So he had something there was something magnetic about him.
Right.
But he was such a wicked devil. When he started his terrorist career and used to train terrorists
he did.
In Lebanon,
yes.
It was in a book by, can't remember it was Feraldo, Geraldine Feraldo, who's an American reporter. He said he used to take live chickens and rip them up alive and say, this is what we need to do to the Israelis. That's how evil he was. Yeah. Okay, we're getting close. Now, then this Intifada starts, and that goes on for a few years. I was reporting, I was over there. There's a lot of death and destruction, blowing up of buses, bus stops, cafes, and people I knew.
Suicide bombers, all over the place.
People were being maimed, and it was an absolute tragedy. And these NGOs that we've mentioned came in full swing behind Arafat, and were absolutely wicked, I would say. And at that time, I was on the BBC defending Israel because of how totally imbalanced their coverage was. Fast forward, because we're in the last 5 minutes. What happened in 2005?
2005. 2005.
Disengagement.
Oh yes, the Gaza. That's right, Gaza. So in 2005, there were Israelis were living in Gaza, and Gaza is right on the Mediterranean, so it's got ideal growing conditions for agriculture. And
this is a photo, isn't it?
It is a photo, and then we have a little video.
Throwing people off roofs, if I'm right.
Well, no, they're not. What they're doing is, this is the IDF literally
taking the Israeli settlers out.
Yes, removing. These people went onto the roofs because they didn't want to leave their homes. Yeah. These were their homes. Yeah. And so they are forcibly removing them from Gaza. Yeah.
That shows their
How many Jews do you have in Gaza today?
0.
How many Jews do you have in Judea and Samaria
There were
today?
over 3,000, if I'm right. And so, you know, they
and
were
how many greenhouses are in Gaza today?
That's right. Exactly.
0.
So last 3 minutes, Mandy. Now we know that we couldn't have fitted more in, because I know when we were preparing, you're saying, oh, why can't we mention this? And I said, Mandy, we've got to hold to the plan. Final one for this programme of a slide is the Annapolis Peace Conference.
Yes, it's at the Annapolis Peace Conference that Ehud Olmert actually presents his plan for the Palestinian, effectively a Palestinian state, to Mahmoud Abbas, who's there shaking and laughing, shaking hands and laughing. And they've 4 times they've been offered a Palestinian state, and 4 times they've refused. So when people like Sadiq Khan, bringing it back to the beginning, say we want a Palestinian state, or President Macron, that's not what they want. The Palestinians themselves do not want a state. They just want the eradication of the Jewish people.
So we've hardly scratched the surface, but I hope it's helped you, Anne, and others, you know, who think there is a lot of information. Donald writes, hello, as Mandy said, since Arafat won the propaganda war, the Palestinian supporters have continued in the same vein. Today in Inverness, a video in the support of the Palestinians and Hamas was displayed on a large format projection onto the wall of the Inverness Town Hall with the full agreement of the local authority. There seemed to be considerable public support displayed. So that is why we're here, partly, isn't it, Mandy?
Indeed.
To try and at least correct some of the misinformation.
Absolutely, because the truth will set you free.
Again?
The truth will set you free.
At that point, someone was saying, Mayor, 1 minute, and so I missed the most important thing, which is the truth will set us free. And
Joel chapter 3, verses, if we are short of time, we'll just say, God says, I will enter into judgment with them in the valley of Jehoshaphat on behalf of my people and my heritage Israel, because they have scattered them among the nations and have divided up my land. So God will come into judgment. Into those who have divided up his land.
You know, even Sharon, you know, so eager to make peace, he divided the land, and this Gaza Strip is still causing so much tragedy today, but with all the best intentions. Bless you, Mandy.
Bless you, Tim. Thank you.
Rattle through. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.